Hello everyone, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. I'm your host, and on this show we're going to be breaking down all of today's movie news, kind of giving a little bit of background into what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. Now, before I get into my main topics, I'd actually like to introduce to everybody my very first co-host on this show, Joseph Flint. Joe, if you want to go ahead and say hi to everybody and give a little bit of background as to your history in film.
Hi everybody, I'm Joseph, very glad to be here. I did video production in BvS in my area, and it was one of my big majors and everything. I really enjoyed nerd stuff, all like Marvel, DC, since I was a little kid, and I've always been into comics, so stuff like this has really been a big part of my life.
Perfect. All right. Well, without any further ado, let's get started with today's Hot Topics. All right, and so the first topic that we're going to get started with today, today is basically going to be a recap of everything that has gone on at San Diego Comic-Con. So we're going to be going over a lot of the panels that happened, and talking specifically about footage, and other announcements and things like that that happened at a lot of these panels. Now, obviously, we're not going to have enough time to cover everything, so these are kind of the main points that we saw that did come out. So the first topic we're going to be talking about today is during the Warner Brothers panel, they actually surprised a lot of people by unveiling Zack Snyder coming out and unveiling the very first teaser for Batman v Superman. Now, because neither Joe or myself were there, we didn't actually get to see live the actual footage, but with this being the modern age and the internet and everything like that, it actually did leak online. So we got to get a pretty good glimpse of it. So you've already kind of heard my recap on one of the episodes the other day, but Joe, I wanted to get your opinion on what you felt about this footage and how it impacted you.
Well, I saw it. You sent it to me the other day after I had saw it on YouTube already, and I watched it a couple times just trying to let it sink in and figure out exactly what I was seeing. And for such a short clip with not much going on, there was so much.
I agree.
You saw Batman and everything pulling the sheet off of the new bat signal. He's wearing the bat armor. Then you see Superman up there with his glowing red eyes, and you know it's about to go down, and it was perfect for Comic-Con.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, just what those little clips symbolized, like the shot composition of everything was what I really took away from it. The pulling the tarp off the bat signal, you know, basically symbolizes that this is a very Dark Knight Returns Batman that we're going to be getting. He's been retired. He's had to cover up the bat signal. And even the slow pan up showing the bat symbol in the air, and you can't see anything, and then the lightning flashes and you see Superman is actually floating inside the bat signal. That to me was, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, we kind of thought something was going to happen. I thought maybe he was going to fly in, but that he's actually hiding there. And then his eyes start to glow, and then you see Batman in the Dark Knight Returns armor. I mean, it almost comes across as a straight adaptation. And I mean, to me, The Dark Knight Returns is one of my absolute favorite graphic novels. I mean, it's just so well written. The characters are so well developed. And I know that Zack Snyder came out last year when he did announce it and said, now we're not doing a straight adaptation of this, but this definitely is the influence. After seeing this footage, do you think that they are going more for a straight adaptation, or do you think, again, it's just going to be influencing the film?
Well, I watched a video on YouTube where they went frame by frame and then panel by panel for the graphic novel, and the similarities were definitely there.
Yep.
But that was just so short of a clip. The idea on speculating on the rest of the movie is going to be so hard.
Yeah,
especially seeing as now they're bringing out Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Lex Luthor. I mean, you got to think, what more can this movie hold for people?
No, exactly, and the fact remains is that the movie's still 2 years away. Like, we still have until May 2016 to hear about all this stuff. Now, I want to hear about what your opinion is on the reason why they delayed it. Because a lot of people originally had assumed, oh, it's because they're not ready yet. And then the rumor came out that they were filming Justice League back-to-back, which they still haven't confirmed. They did confirm that Zack Snyder's directing it and that it will be the next film, but we don't know exactly when it's going to be coming out. we didn't hear anything about any other DC news, which really surprised me. This was the only DC announcement that they had, this and the reveal of the Wonder Woman costume. I mean, with The Rock tweeting out that photo of Shazam, Black Adam, and Superman and saying the announcement will be made soon, and then nothing came from that. What do you think exactly is going on in terms of all these DC properties, and especially the reason behind why they bumped the release date?
I think one of the big things is, and we'll notice it more in the media now, especially with the internet, with The Rock specifically, and Aquaman now too being cast. They're just now getting cast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think casting had something to do with that, and writing the script definitely was probably a big challenge for something like this. Even if they are doing Justice League back to back, they had to go over both scripts and make sure everything fit together right.
Right, and it was actually rumored the other day that Chris Terrio, the writer that they got to come on to Batman v Superman, has actually been commissioned to write the script for Justice League. Do you think that means that we're going to get a two-part story, or do you think they're going to be separate? Because I'm thinking now that if they're bringing the same writer on, not only are we going to get the continuity, because the same writer, same director, pretty much same cast, but do you think that they're going to actually end this movie on a cliffhanger leading into Justice League, or do you think it will be a self-contained story, and then Justice League will be its own other story?
Well, that shows right there their difference between Marvel doing each character standalone film and then doing the big Avengers movie. I think what's going to happen with DC is they're taking a movie labeled Batman versus Superman
Mm-hmm.
and bringing in so many other characters that it should be just Justice League prequel and keep it at that. I mean, I really think that it's going to lead into the Justice League to a point where you're going to want that Justice League movie right after.
Right. Now, with the rumored the rumored timeline that Nikki Fink sent out about 2 months ago, when I originally talked about that, there were the few titles on there that seemed kind of off to me were Shazam and Sandman. Do you think now, with DC not releasing any information about that, do you think that was actually real, or do you think that Nikki Fink just came up with it, or was given to it by a source that turned out to not be correct?
I don't know. I think that would be a biased question for me specifically because I've been wanting the Shazam movie forever now, and seeing either The Rock play Shazam or Black Adam for me is nerdgasm. That would be something that it'd be hard to answer, and because I want it to happen so much. But,
right.
I think it's possible some wires got crossed, somebody said something, and it ended up being not true somewhere.
Now,
anything's possible.
Do you think that this is kind of like a Marvel situation where the contracts just didn't get signed in time? Because that's what everybody has been talking about as to why they didn't announce anything else at the Marvel panel, and also why it started 15 minutes late, was because they didn't have the contract signed in time. Do you think that could have been another reason as to why that happened?
It's possible. Again, for something like that, you also got to think this is Marvel, this is DC. They're giant companies. They could be
fair enough
a little behind. It's Comic-Con. I mean, they could be a little behind that day. But I'm really hoping that they just didn't have the contract signed. At that moment.
I agree, because I mean, just looking at what was coming out before each of the panels, like the rumored timeline for DC. The fact that we were hoping to get at least not even the official title or release date, but the lineup that was going to be shown in the Justice League movie, because Aquaman hasn't been officially confirmed to be in the movie, even though Jason Momoa has been very careful to not officially announce that he is playing the character, although in one interview he almost did. But I mean, not even announcing officially that Aquaman is in the film. Knowing that Victor Stone is in the movie, but they didn't specifically say Cyborg. Knowing that Wonder Woman is going to be in the film, but she's going to be Diana for the most part of it, and probably only showing up as Wonder Woman near the end. Do you think that could have played a lot into the actual no DC announcement made. No information came out, because what I got from that, especially considering now they've delayed Batman v Superman, and they did that 7 months after they announced the initial release date, and then the rumor coming out saying that Justice League was going to film back to back, but now they've announced Justice League but no release date. Then The Rock teasing this role and no official announcement, no additional other DC properties. I tweeted out and said that DC is acting scared, like they don't actually have a plan. They're not showing confidence in their properties. Do you think that's accurate, or do you think that they have something else that's planned that's going to be a massive announcement that's going to be very soon, or do you think we have to wait till next year to even get something out of them?
I think that DC in some cases is playing it very smart. They're looking at Marvel and saying, okay, they have these heavy hitters here. We need to make sure we have everything right, or we're going to just tank. It's going to be the end. And I think it's possible they'll give some pretty juicy things up until Comic-Con next year, and then the big thing. But I don't think they're going to just leave us hanging
right
until Comic-Con next year.
I hope not. I mean, it comes across as just that. Yeah, it comes across as them really kind of being scared and not ready to announce anything, because I think everybody out there is ready for The Rock to be in a superhero movie. I think everybody out there is ready to see DC actually take some initiative and put out some of these films, because Man of Steel really showed that they do have a new idea, a new universe, a new vision that they really want to explore. And now they've brought Batman into that. They brought Wonder Woman into that. We know that Cyborg's eventually going to show up because we have Victor Stone. Aquaman has been heavily rumored and for the most part cast in this film, so we know they have a plan, but it's almost like they're not confident in it to actually talk to us about it. And to me, that's very weird. But the one thing that really did surprise me was Jeff Johns came out and officially confirmed that the DC Cinematic Universe and the DC Television Universe are going to, in fact, be separate. And that's
something I am very much mixed on that one.
And
I'm a big fan of Arrow.
I'm sorry?
I am a very big fan of Arrow, and I think he'd be perfect in the Justice League. Stephen Amell is just perfect.
He does an amazing job as Oliver Queen. But the one thing, there are differences in the TV show from the continuity of the comics. One of the major ones that jumps out to me is it's Starling City, not Star City. Now,
that's something I saw too.
Did you watch the trailer for season 3? Because in season 3 you see what's Brandon Routh's character's name? The Atom. It's Ray Harper. No, that's Roy Harper.
Yeah, Ray Harper.
It's Ray something. Roy Harper is the guy from the first 2 seasons. But in that trailer, there's a quick shot of him in front of a billboard or in front of a sign, and it says Star City. So I wonder if after everything that's happened in the first 2 seasons, if it actually is going to be changing the name to Star City and leading into more of the continuity with the comics. If that's the case...
That'd be a very good way to go. I think, with somebody as big as like Harley Quinn coming on that show.
Yep. I really love that little tease, by the way, too.
I didn't catch that originally.
It's just an audio clip. It's in one of the episodes in the middle of the season near the end, the Suicide Squad episode.
Yeah, I ended up going back and seeing it later.
Okay.
I ended up going back and seeing it later, and it was really interesting because somebody had to tell me, wait, that's Harley Quinn, and I'm like, wait, no kidding. I go back and all you see is like the pigtails, the little pigtail look coming through the window of the asylum door, and I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome! I didn't even catch that.
And it wasn't even that too. They had that, but they also had her. She said something, and it was like, "Don't you want me?" And it was in the Harley Quinn voice, like the one that we've had in the Arkham games.
You guys need a therapist or something.
Yeah.
And what's her name? Arguing.
Amanda Waller. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. We're still talking about TV universe. But yeah, there are positives and there are negatives to the cinematic universe and TV universe being separate. The positives that I can see are things that have actually happened that have been negative on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. yet, but it's been out long enough and this news has been out long enough that you've probably already heard about it. But with the Captain America 2 tie-in and the Hydra basically taking over S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show had to set up all of these unrelated episodes, all these episodes where nothing really happened and there couldn't be any big ramifications because it wouldn't have made a difference. S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be shut down on episode 17 or 18. And having the show have their hands tied and having to wait for things that are coming out in the movies that are not happening for a year, year and a half, that could really affect the show. So I do understand the positives behind why they would want to keep them separate, but in the same regard, I don't think that people are going to get confused by them having two people, but I do think that one could affect the other, because if, let's say, Stephen Amell is just as good, if not better, than he is right now on the next couple of seasons, and then they end up doing a Green Arrow in the movie, and the Green Arrow in the movie, actually, people prefer him more because he's either a more charismatic actor, he brings more depth and layers to the character. I don't really see that happening because Stephen Amell does an amazing job, but if that did happen, people could then start to prefer that character, and it could start to hurt the viewership of the show, just because they're now saying, I like this adaptation better, I don't necessarily like the way that they've gone with this one, now seeing this other version. And that could also affect either the TV shows or it could affect the movies, because they'll say, I don't want to watch this one, I really like what Stephen Amell has done. So do you think that even though we did want to see Stephen Amell in that role, even though Grant Gustave looks like he's done an amazing job on the Flash TV show, do you think that it was a wise decision for them to do it?
Like I said, I'm very mixed. I think that this gives the show a little bit more freedom with what they can use, definitely, because they're not going to be connected. They're allowed probably to use more. Now seeing that Firestorm is going to be in the show and cameoing in the new Flash, that's something that's really big for me too. And I think that's a good point. And then the bad point would be if they had actually let Stephen Amell be the Arrow in the Justice League movie, or the new Flash be the Flash for the Justice League movie. It could be, like you said, they don't, how do I put it, they don't live up to the expectation of what the TV show would portray.
Right. All right, well, I was a little conflicted when it did first come out, but I do actually agree, just because of what we've seen happen on S.H.I.E.L.D., I do agree that it is probably a smart decision. Now, that's not to say that they will be using Green Arrow, that they will be using Flash. It's been heavily rumored that Flash will be in the initial lineup of Justice League, but they may go with other characters, and this may be a moot point, because even though the TV shows and movies are going to be separate, they may not even use the same characters. You know, they could be all completely different characters. So it's still going to be, we still got a lot of time to wait, because the rumored release date for Justice League alone at the earliest is 2017. So we still got a long time to wait. And I have a feeling that because of the lack of announcements this year, especially in the Marvel panel, which we're going to get to next, I think that next year is going to be a major year for these announcements. We thought that for this year because of everything that had been leaking out, and then nothing came out. But when Comic-Con hits next year, Ant-Man will be about 1 week away, and we won't have the official title for Captain America 3, so Marvel's going to have a big panel. They're going to be announcing a lot of their Phase 3 movies. And then DC is going to have Batman v Superman come out next year, so they're probably going to unveil the first full trailer for the movie at next year's Comic-Con, plus giving insight as to what their next slate of films are probably going to be. So next year we're probably hopefully going to get a little bit more information, but let's get on to the Marvel panel now. A couple of things were surprising about Marvel, and surprising in the fact that they didn't talk about a lot. Like, this year was kind of a letdown for Comic-Con, but with the Marvel panel, the Ant-Man section, we had Peyton Reed come out, which he didn't get a very good response. I don't know if you noticed that. People were fairly quiet when he came on stage, because I think it's still a little fresh about Edgar Wright leaving the property. But they revealed that Corey Stoll is going to be playing Darren Cross, also known as Yellow Jacket, which we knew that Yellow Jacket was going to be the villain, but we didn't know who it was going to be. And then Evangeline Lilly is actually playing Hope Van Dyne, also known as Wasp. There was a rumor coming out just before Comic-Con that Wasp was actually going to be a secondary character in Avengers Age of Ultron, and that she would be played by an Asian actress. And that made a little bit of sense, because the character of Wasp was actually an Asian American in the Ultimates comics, which they take a lot of their references from. Were you surprised by them announcing Evangeline Lilly as Wasp?
I was and I wasn't. I like where they're going with her character, being the daughter and everything. That this is really a good place for everything to start off. It shows a little backstory, like a little history for the character of Ant-Man itself.
Yep.
And it brings a lot more to like what Captain America does with his political themes with his movies. It would be there's backstory, there's something back in the 1940s or 1950s that happened, and we're just now learning about it. So
fair enough. Yeah, that's actually I never even thought of that. That's a good point. And the one similarity that I really noticed, especially with the little bit of information that we got from the plot, are the similarities between this and the first Iron Man. Because we know that Ant-Man was being written at the same time the first Iron Man was. Those were the first two Marvel properties ever announced. And now seeing this, how, with the exception of the mentor aspect, because that's even hinted at in Iron Man, but you have Darren Cross, who's working with Michael Douglas's character, Hank Pym, and he's being sought after to be the next person to take on the Ant-Man suit. And Hank Pym sees what Darren Cross is actually doing with the company, because Darren Cross takes over the company, and he then goes to Scott Lang and says, I want you to be Ant-Man, I'm going to be mentoring you. And then Darren Cross becomes Yellow Jacket and becomes the villain near the end. With the similarities of Ant-Man, do you think a lot of those things, or with similarities of Iron Man, sorry, do you think a lot of those things were from the Edgar Wright script, or do you think those came in after the fact?
I think there's a lot of similarities that were probably taken from the Edgar Wright script. Everybody who had read it had said, this is going to be great, this is going to be awesome, bringing so much hype into it that I don't see why they wouldn't take something from it, really.
Oh, and I'm pretty sure still that he's going to get a screenwriting credit for the film, because even though, from everyone that I've talked to, they have all said that this was, and it usually, they always say this, but it never ends up being the case, but they did say that this was an amicable break, that both of these parties were understanding that the properties that they wanted to tell were different from the other party, and this was an amicable break. No one was fired. It just, this is the vision that we need now because of the evolving cinematic universe that we've now created. And Edgar Wright's version of Ant-Man no longer worked in that cinematic universe, and they said, we need you to make these changes, and he wasn't able to do that because that would have compromised his vision, so then they both separated amicably. But we do know that he is going to be getting a screenwriting credit. Him and Joe Cornish will be getting a screenwriting credit on the film.
Oh, and they deserve it. They do.
Oh, absolutely. Because I don't think that... I think they've taken a lot of the content out, but the core storyline and the story beats, I do think, are going to be very similar to what they originally wrote. And the one thing that does mean is that even though the Marvel Cinematic Universe has evolved over these 8, 9, 10 years since they initially had come up with the idea, there is still a through line. There is still that original idea that they started with the original Iron Man that they can still play with, and that they can still adapt. And I really have to commend Marvel for doing that, because, and also commend them for saying that even though this is a property that a lot of people are backing only because mainly the creative team who's behind it, for them to still go in and say, I'm sorry, but this no longer fits into the story that we're trying to tell, and we need to bring on somebody else. I really do have to commend them for sticking to their guns and doing that, and not releasing something just because they think it's going to be popular. They want to tell the best possible story that will tell their overarching story.
Oh,
and you really have to commend them for that, because not a lot of studios would have the gauze to do that.
Yeah, and I mean that goes into like the test footage with Scott Lang that they released. You think of how quickly that came out. We saw little bits of the CGI for Ant-Man in, I think, the ABC Hour documentary on the new Avengers movie.
Yep.
And right at the end, you saw the little CGI, and it makes me wonder, did they have that coming from the Edgar Wright script?
Oh, that stuff was actually, that was the test footage that Edgar Wright showed off a couple of years ago at Comic-Con.
It was? Okay.
Yeah, that was before they had anybody cast. That was his kind of pitch reel, very similar to the Deadpool footage that we're going to talk to in a little bit.
Okay.
It was all done that way, but they actually did shoot live action. They shot, I think it took a day or two to film that. But it was to give the studio an idea of what they were going for, because Ant-Man, even though it was announced, it was never greenlit. They never said, you're in production, go ahead and do it. And so this was Edgar Wright's way of saying, listen, contemporarily, this is how we're planning on doing it. The special effects are at a point now where we can do this effectively. And they needed to show off the humor aspect, the fact that they're not going to take themselves too seriously, the fact that this will be an action comedy and it will be a heist film. So they needed to convey all of that in like a 1 to 2 minute video. And I got to see some of it in HD, but I've seen a lot of it just in bootleg form that you can find sometimes you can find it on the internet, but a lot of times the studio does pull it down. But it does start off with the elevator opening up, and they don't see anybody, or sorry, not an elevator, he's in a grate, like a vent, and he's in ant form, and he jumps down, and as he jumps down, he then immediately boosts into regular size, and those guys see him, the security guards, they pull out their guns, and as he starts running towards them, he jumps, and as he jumps, he turns into ant form. And then he runs along the top of their gun, and then he jumps up and punches them in the face, but he punches them just as hard as a normal person would. And then once they're both taken down, he then grows back into regular size form, gets in the elevator, and the elevator doors close. So that was the initial test footage that they shot, and they've updated the suit, because based on the test footage we saw, and the helmet that they debuted at Comic-Con, of this year, we do know that they've updated the suit. Now, either what we saw in the test footage was going to be the suit that Hank Pym was going to wear, and the new version is the one that Scott Lang wears. We still don't know that because they've been very sparse on the details. I did like the description of the footage that they showed at Comic-Con of this year with Scott Lang running along the side of a building, not knowing how to control the suit, and Hank Pym talking him through it, saying, use the helmet to call the ants, and then the flying ant comes up, lands in front of him, he gets on, and then goes flying through the city. Like, to me, it sounds, at first glance, it sounds absolutely ridiculous and absolutely silly. But when you think about the concept of Ant-Man, it has to be that. In order for it to work, like, it cannot take itself seriously. It cannot be Captain America 2. It cannot take the same tone as Winter Soldier because it would not work. It needs to be tongue-in-cheek. It needs to kind of poke fun at itself about how ridiculous that it is. Like, the first line that Michael Douglas says in it is, superheroes, give me a break. You know, like, that's the first line that we heard in the concept footage. So the fact that they're not taking themselves too seriously, I am really adamant about that and really admire them for knowing the type of movie that it is and really sticking towards that. My worry is...
Definitely.
Sorry?
If you watch, or if you are big with the Ultimates comics, you know that Ant-Man, Hank Pym, is very deep depression, alcoholism, beating his wife. I mean, stuff like that.
Oh, and I know that they talked about this early on. The question was asked, and they said there are aspects of Hank Pym's life that they are not going to be addressing. So,
which is great. Because this is going to be a lower demographic movie, teenagers to 30-year-olds.
Absolutely.
So you wouldn't want that kind of stuff in there. And so I'm glad they're making it into a kind of like Ocean's 13 meets comedy kind of thing. It's great.
I actually never even saw the parallel between Ocean's 11 and this. That would actually really work if they took that tone and made it this, but have a little bit more action, a little bit more spectacle. That could really work. My only worry is, and I know he's a geek at heart, so that does give this a little bit more clout, but Peyton Reed has not done a whole lot as a director that I've particularly liked. I mean, he did The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, which it had its moments, but for the most part, it was it had a lot more dramatic elements to it. Yes Man, I thought it could have been a lot better. It was funny, but I felt his direction I didn't find was very good in it.
That's Jim Carrey though, right there though too. Jim Carrey with his a little bit more serious roles, even with the comedy undertones. Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
Oh, I love that movie.
And Yes Man, both of those movies, they could have been better, but they were great as they were.
Fair enough. Now let's get on to the Avengers 2 footage. Now, it still hasn't leaked online yet.
Oh no! They actually had somebody leak it on there for like 2 hours, and then they took it down.
The video was online because I know the audio's been on there.
The video itself was online for 2 hours, and then it got taken down.
Really?
And I was lucky enough to see it, and oh, that was awesome.
Oh, you got to describe what you saw, because I've only read the descriptions. I haven't actually seen anything. I listened to the audio, like them trying to lift the hammer. Just that scene just sounds really, really, really funny, and it brings back what everybody loved about the first movie, was their banter between one another. I think that's one of the reasons why the first Avengers worked so well.
Oh, it very much was. Seeing Rhodey there too, War Machine. That was really fun, and it was something very unexpected. I did not think that he would be in the movie, to be honest. But seeing them, like him and Iron Man trying for it, Iron Man's like, oh, wait a second, let me go get an Iron Man arm. Let's see if I can pick it up. That was funny. It just showed his arrogance as Iron Man. It was perfect. Captain America, seeing him budget a little bit, that kind of got me into the, he is a little worthy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then seeing this giant Ultron made of all these types of like armor pieces that were scattered around Avengers Tower, in his little speech, which you did say in a couple videos ago that you wanted to see some audio clips of Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really awesome to see.
I was
extinction speech.
Yes, that, like, the power of those words, and one of the actors came out, I think it was Chris Evans, who said that you almost want to hang out with Ultron, because how he talks, the vocabulary that he uses is just beautiful, and he's very, very intelligent. The question that I have is that Ultron Mark I armor that was shown on the Comic-Con floor that I sent out, was that the Ultron that was kind of screeching out, that screeching sound that you heard? Was that the Ultron that they were showing, or was it something different?
No, it was made of, if I remember, and if I saw it right and everything, I'm pretty sure it was like scattered up Iron Man pieces. Okay,
because that's what the clip, or that picture showed. He had kind of like a goldish face. He had like a beat up gauntlet as his arm. There were a couple of things I didn't see that as very intimidating. I kind of looked at that and thought that kind of looked like a cheap knockoff Halloween costume. So I was wondering what it actually looked like on screen. I guess it's tough in bootleg form. We do know that we are going to be getting some variation of this footage at some point in the future. Kevin Feige said it won't be for a while, but we will be getting it. So that's at least something to look forward to.
As of right now, I think it was last night it got posted, somebody leaked a picture of the final Ultron armor.
I saw that. Yes, I did see that. That's been making its rounds.
That was really cool.
Yeah. And it kind of is what we expected it to look like. I mean, the Entertainment Weekly cover that came out a few weeks ago of the concept art version of Ultron kind of gave everybody an idea of what it was going to look like, and then just seeing a fully rendered version. The thing that I'm really glad about too is James Spader's voice. They didn't try to alter it; they used his actual voice.
It works so well. It does.
Because
I was so happy.
The charisma that guy has. I mean, when you watch him on screen, like, the one thing that I'm kind of sad about is that we're not actually going to get to see him, because he's such a charismatic actor, and half of his acting skill, like half of one of the reasons why his characters work so well, is the facial mannerisms that he embodies, and the way that he's able to convey everything that he's trying to convey is just he just oozes cool. And that's just James Spader, and I'm so happy that they got somebody of his caliber to play the villain in this.
Oh, definitely. I really think that Age of Ultron is going to be a great movie, and I was rooting for the Hulkbuster armor, and from the beginning, I wanted the Hulkbuster armor in the first movie, and now to see it in this one, it's great. I am seeing a lot of fan choices. You'll see the majority vote for fans being actually listened to with Marvel.
That's actually true.
And stuff like that too.
Yeah. what do you think about them only announcing Guardians 2? Pretty much the one that we knew was coming because of the unanimous word of mouth that the first Guardians of the Galaxy is already getting. Were you kind of taken aback as to them not announcing Doctor Strange, not announcing Thor 3 or anything of that sort, or even Black Panther, which they've been hinting at forever?
Well, I think with Black Panther, first of all, they've released so many teasers and saying, oh, it's not set in stone, but kind of things, that it's basically proven to be released. With Doctor Strange, and anybody who knows me, I'm the biggest Doctor Strange fan ever.
Yep.
I am very set back that they didn't release anything, but I can also understand that if the contract hadn't been signed...
When he was actually asked directly about that, when Steve Weintraub, who's also known as Frosty over at Collider, he asked him directly about why they weren't able to get the Joaquin Phoenix contract signed in time, and he goes, rumors, there's so many rumors out there, and he goes, so...
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And he goes, so you mean it's true? And he goes, everything's a rumor until it's true. That, to me... I mean, Kevin Feige, I don't think there's anybody out there that is better at him than misdirection. He is ridiculously capable of being able to say yes when he actually means no, and say no when he means yes, and say maybe when he's trying to actually answer an actual question, and he never gives a straight answer, but he gives you the information that you're looking for.
Like his little head nods. You'll see him in interview and everything. He'll be saying no, and he'll be nodding yes.
Yep.
And it's so funny to watch.
Or the little head nod that he gave when they said when they were talking about. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say when he was asked about whether or not they could in the future develop a female Thor or a black Captain America. And he's like, well, he gave his answer about how anything's possible. If it's popular in the comics, then that's something that we'll strive to do. But their main goal is to bring out already existing female characters or already existing African American characters. And then he did this little kind of head nod, this little head gesture when he goes, or African characters. And you could tell that was a direct jab at Black Panther. Do you think that Black Panther is confirmed to be part of Phase 3? Or do you think that they're still waiting until after Avengers 3 for that movie to come out? What do you think the chances are of that? Because we know that Doctor Strange is going to be one of the next movies coming out. They've got the director, they've got the writer. The rumored release date is July 2016. And I can see that happening because there's movement that's happening faster on this than it is on Thor 3. And Thor 3 right now is just has writers. We don't even have really an idea of what's going on. We have a rumored list of villains that'll appear in Doctor Strange. We have the writer. We have the director. There's a rumored casting announcement that's imminent. What do you think the chances are that we'll actually get something like Black Panther in Phase 3?
Well, Kevin Feige came out a little while ago and said that the Avengers did not need, and I quote, did not need any more diversity. And either he's being very idiotic by saying that because in some terms we have very few female characters for the Avengers. So either he has something up his sleeve when it comes to more diverse roles, Black Panther, Miss Marvel, or he's just doing that Kevin Feige misdirection lead again, like he normally is.
Yeah, I think that's more than likely the case. I've been championing Benedict Cumberbatch for a while, and I actually heard several weeks ago that he was a lock, that he was on there. The contract hadn't been signed yet, but that he was the one that they had chosen. And then just a few days before Comic-Con, the Joaquin Phoenix rumor came out, and the funny thing is, the only reason the Joaquin Phoenix rumor came out is because somebody saw him in a comic book store asking for Doctor Strange comics. That's really the only thing that we have to go on with this. Do you think...
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, do you think that there is actual any truth to this, that he could be up for the role? Or do you think that he's just a fan of Doctor Strange and he was just going in there looking for comics?
I think it fits kind of into the whole rumors, so many rumors thing that Kevin Feige said. It really does kind of fit. That maybe he was just looking for a little comics. Maybe he heard, oh wait, Doctor Strange is coming out. I need to stock up. I think it's possible he could have been looked at for the character. when it comes to the Benedict Cumberbatch theory, I've always been a fan of his acting. I really have. It's just I liked his acting when he himself was off screen in a way. I really don't think that he looked the part for Doctor Strange as much. But I really think he could rise to the role if the need comes.
Oh yeah, I mean he's one of the few out there who he really excels not only in film and on television, but also in theater. And he's really a diversified actor, and that's something that I think Marvel is really looking at. I don't think they care about A-listers. They don't care about needing someone to sell their movie because we don't live in that age anymore. We live in an age where the content, the story, the impact of the characters and their relationships is what actually sells most people on movies. Just point in case, look at this year's box office. This year's been down over 20%.
Oh, yeah.
And it just goes to show that the studio system is now starting to take a look at what's actually working and what's not working, such as, it's not just flashes and loud noises and explosions that are going to sell movies anymore, because that's what people thought they were going to get from something like Edge of Tomorrow. That's why Edge of Tomorrow did not do very well. Even Transformers. Transformers has done amazing overseas, but domestically, it has not done anywhere near what any of the other movies have done. I think it's either the lowest grossing domestic release of the Transformers movies or very close. But it is nothing compared to what some of the other Transformers movies have done. And then you look at, Godzilla. People thought that was just going to be a bang smash, loud noises, flashy images movie, and it didn't do as well as they thought it would. Do you think that we're going to start to see a major shift in where panels or where studios are actually going to be looking at their content?
In Charlotte.
Pardon?
I remember going down to Heroes Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, when, I think a week before the first Transformers movie was set to release. And that movie was the biggest talk of that convention.
Yep.
And I was so excited for it. And now it kind of downslid and everything. Well,
they just got worse and worse and worse. I mean, I did like where they tried to take the third one. I thought the third one definitely had its redeeming qualities. It was a very big improvement over number 2. But it didn't capture the magic that the first one had, the nostalgic effect, the fact that they showed the robots sparingly, but when they did show them, you really felt that impact. You felt that childhood excitement that you felt when you played with those toys as a kid when you watched the cartoons.
Right.
And then seeing the second one come out and just crapping over everybody's expectations. A lot of people like to blame the writer's strike for it, and I know the writer's strike did impact it to a certain degree, but the fact remains Michael Bay doesn't have anybody to say no to him, and that's one of the big problems.
I think with the third movie, the third Transformers movie, it was okay. They focused more on the secondary characters more and not the Transformers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the one problem I think I had with that movie is it kind of ruined everything for one of my favorite storylines, being Cybertron, the planet itself being the biggest of all Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a fan of that theory, that storyline. So.
That would have been very difficult to adapt for a mainstream audience, though, and I think that's why they tried to avoid that. So I can understand the reasoning behind it, but I do see where you're coming from.
With the what was the Godzilla movie that just came out, I went to see it. It was good. I just wasn't happy with their lack of Godzilla at 3/4 of the movie.
And that's exactly what I said in my review, too.
It was good, though, for what it was.
Oh, absolutely.
More.
Absolutely. And I think that's, to a certain degree, I actually think that the movie succeeded in what it needed to do. Because it needed to reinstall people's expectations as to what a Godzilla movie could actually be like. And I think that because the studio said, listen, people still remember the 1998 movie. They still remember how bad that movie was, and the only thing that it had in relation to Godzilla was the title. And I think they needed to have this be kind of like, you know, getting your feet wet, you know, just putting your feet in just to see what the temperature's like before you actually jump in. And so that's why with the first Godzilla, not really showcasing him, keeping the budget down as low as they could for the type of movie that they were making. It was still, I think, $130 million movie, but still keeping the budget low for the type of movie that they were making. And they made their money back. They gave across the type of movie that they're trying to make, the type of franchise they're trying to launch, with the tone, the design of Godzilla, the role that Godzilla will play in the world. And now, with them having gotten their feet wet, having that movie succeeded in what it needed to do, because generally people did like it. A lot of the people had the same complaint that you did, myself included, that Godzilla just was not in it enough. And when the fight started to happen, they cut away to the human characters, or they cut away to something else. But now with Godzilla 2 being announced, and them including Mothra, Rodan, and Ghidorah, I think they've told everybody, saying, listen, we understand what didn't work in the first one, what everybody was wanting more of. Wait till you see number 2.
Yeah, right.
And especially that. And the other thing, too, with Godzilla 2, we know that Gareth Edwards is coming back. He's going to be doing that after he finishes up Star Wars spin-off number 1. Now, that's scheduled to release December 2016. And I am going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that Legendary has worked out a deal with Lucasfilm where as soon as he has the first cut done, he's still going to oversee the overall cut of the film. But I'm pretty sure once they have first cut finalized, he's going to then start pre-production on Godzilla 2. And I think Godzilla 2 is actually going to start filming before the Star Wars movie's even released. We're going to get it sooner than they originally had announced. Because the rumor has it that we're going to get it late 2018, early 2019. Because he's going to need a lot of time to prep it. I think we're going to get it late 2017, early 2018. Because he's going to have already started it and maybe even started filming before Star Wars spin-off is going to be released. Because he's a creative genius. And he does not need to be 100% completely involved with post-production. A lot of it is going to be the special effects. So he can go in and have a meeting once a week and say, listen, this is what this shot needs to be like, this is what this shot needs to be like, this is what this needs to convey. And then he'll come back in a week and they'll show him what they have, because it'll take that time to render the footage anyway. So I think in that time span, he can be working on Godzilla 2 and actually get that out sooner rather than later. Because the longer a movie takes to come out, the more it's disappeared from people's memory. The less and less people do remember from that first one, or at least had that excitement level for it actually gets reduced. So I do think that we're going to get that movie sooner rather than later. But the more interesting thing that I thought of that came out of Comic-Con was when Skull Island was announced. We didn't know who was writing it. We didn't know who was directing it. Well, now they've announced Max Borstein is writing it, who wrote Godzilla. So Legendary has this guy working on their 2 biggest monster properties. Joe Cornish, who directed Attack the Block, is currently the frontrunner to direct it. He hasn't signed on yet, but he's currently the frontrunner. Could this mean that we will potentially in the future have a King Kong Godzilla team-up movie? And the only concern I have with that is if Skull Island is supposedly a prequel. It's set during the origins of the King Kong storyline, which we haven't seen yet. But are they doing it as a prequel to the Peter Jackson film, or is this just a prequel to the story that everybody knows? Because if it's a prequel to the Peter Jackson film, King Kong's like 30 feet tall. Godzilla is 380 feet tall.
Too thick.
So having them have a potential team-up movie or a fighting movie, if they don't choose the same side, if they end up going to fight one another, King Kong could start jumping out of the air to try to start pounding on Godzilla. And Godzilla would just breathe his fire on him and turn him into a little piece of chicken. So I really don't know if that is possible unless either they significantly increase the size of Kong or they make it a team-up where they actually go and they have to battle something else. What do you think is more likely?
Well, I think Legendary is looking at other companies like Marvel and DC, and I think that's why they put Matt Borstein on both Godzilla and Skull Island, so he could bring the flavor of both of those movies over. And I very, very close to the idea that it's possible at either the end of Skull Island or the end of Godzilla 2, whichever one comes out first, that it's going to end up tying to the other one.
Oh, I think Skull Island will be out first. It was announced for, I think it was November 4th, 2016, is its announced release date.
I think then by the end of credits and everything.
You think there'll be an after credits scene?
Like that, I think it could be, and I'd love to see something like that because that'd be perfect. Making King Kong bigger though, that really,
oh yeah,
I can see the downside to that, and I can see the upside to it.
Well, King Kong being bigger would really take away from the fantastical element of Kong. I mean, the iconic shot of him climbing up the Empire State Building, if they made him bigger, he wouldn't be able to do that. He'd get part of the... He'd climb 3 arm lengths up and the tower would rip in half because he'd be so big and so heavy. So, there are a lot of waters that they're going to have to navigate with this, but just the proposed idea that these two could be meeting up in a movie using today's technology is really cool. One thing, though, I need to ask you, yes or no, do you think with King Kong, Andy Serkis will be back?
I really don't know. I think it's possible.
Or do you think that they will, because now the motion capture performance cast is now increasing, especially with Andy Serkis's Imaginarium in London and having more and more actors utilizing this technology, do you think they may get someone else to do that?
I think he'd be nice to have and everything, but they might go for somebody a little bigger, a little bit more. I mean, he's pretty big already, but
do you think they're going to use? Do you think they're going to use the actor who plays Kong as a selling tool? Or do you think they're going to try to go more for performance, like whoever can get the best performance, because you're not going to be able to see that person. So it'd be like announcing that Scarlett Johansson was the main star of the movie Her, even though she's one of the main stars, but it's only her voice. So they did hide that away. They did say and Scarlett Johansson, because even though she is throughout most of the movie, she was just a voice. Do you think that would be the same thing with something like King Kong, where they wouldn't announce who the actual person is, or try to sell that on the poster? It would just be utilizing their performance.
I think performance would definitely be the majority there, because I mean, you look at the King or the Godzilla movie now, and I'm really not worried about who is doing like the motion or the movement specifically with the motion capture, just to get the movements out and everything. You don't see who did that until the end credits. And they didn't put that on the main poster, nope. So I think it's very possible that performance would be big.
All right, cool. We're kind of getting pretty low on time. The one other topic that I wanted to address, and especially get your opinion on, was at the Fox panel. No mention whatsoever about Fantastic Four. And the thing that I noticed, and I even said this on an episode a couple of weeks ago, it's looking more and more likely that this year's Comic-Con was going to be a non-comic book movie Comic-Con, where most of the movie announcements were going to have nothing to do with Comic-Con or with comic books. And then we had DC come out and they only talked about Batman v Superman. We had Marvel come out and they only talked about Ant-Man and Avengers. They didn't talk about any of their upcoming properties. Fox had no mention whatsoever about anything involving X-Men or the Fantastic Four. But the day before Comic-Con, the leaked photo of the Thing came out, and it gave what they were designing, or what they were trying to convey as the shoulders and head of what the new Thing was going to look like. Do you think they just didn't have enough prepared, or do you think that they're worried about what people are going to already or what people are going to think about this film because of what they already assume about it, with the casting choices and the director choice? Even though he's a great director, he's only known for found footage. And with that comment that was made about how it's going to have a found footage feel, I don't think that it's actually going to be found footage. I think it's going to have the same kind of... it's going to capture you the same way that a found footage movie will, but it's not going to have the shaky cam from one person's perspective. I think it's just going to have that feel. But what do you feel about about them not announcing anything, and whether or not they actually have confidence in this property, like as much confidence as we at least hope they do.
I think that either they're seriously messing up and it's going to be possibly the worst picture and make the old Fantastic Four movies look like gold.
Look like Citizen Kane.
or they actually are just not confident and they actually have something. Seeing the Thing picture released, having them not having anything to do with that, no comment on that at all. That kind of worries me. And then what everybody else thinks of the movie so far, being it the found footage possibility, the biracial brother and sister Sue Storm, Johnny Storm combo, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I see where it can work. The fan base really is shrugging their shoulders, asking how.
Well, yeah, and one of the more common things that I keep hearing is because they come out and said that this isn't really a superhero movie per se. Josh Trank telling Kate Mara to not read any of the source material. Them actually saying that they're not superheroes. Apparently, they're not even going to be referenced as the Fantastic Four in the movie. Johnny Storm and Sue Storm not being blood siblings. Why, outside of them just taking the name Fantastic Four, why do you think they actually chose to do this? Because a lot of the core elements which make this movie and the storyline an adaptation are now being removed. Do you think that they just chose Fantastic Four to have something that's name related? Because there's not a lot that I'm getting from this that actually says that it's an adaptation of the source material. Because even if Johnny Storm and Sue Storm are adopted siblings, that's fine. It doesn't really change a lot of their core aspects of their characters. And first off, how are they going to get their powers? Because they haven't really been very clear. I think there was some reference made to how that's going to happen, but I think it was that Sue Storm and Johnny Storm are actually born with their abilities, and Ben Grimm and Reed Richards are actually the ones who acquire these powers. That's the rumor that I've heard, and I hope that's not the case, because if that is, why call it Fantastic Four? You've now completely taken away everything that this movie is about, that these storylines are about, and at that point, the Tim Story movies will be better adaptations of that source material, and that is a scary thing to say.
Yeah, I looked at it like this. If they had two possibilities with the Fantastic Four, they could either reboot the franchise or they could take what was already made into a new direction. Specifically, they could have taken different actors and actresses and just done like Future Foundation and just redo what was already messed up, saying, okay, well, this kind of happened, but we're gonna fix it now, and taking credibility. But it seems right now that this is all just going down the toilet. I mean,
and yeah, I don't get it, because the writer of the movie is Simon Kinberg, the man who just brought us X-Men: Days of Future Past.
Exactly,
and
it was a great. X-Men was a great movie. I loved the new one, and then seeing the teaser at the end. Spoiler alert, if anybody hasn't seen it yet, it's been out for a little bit. The Apocalypse teaser for Age of Apocalypse.
Sabanur.
I mean, seeing that and being able to cheer at my computer and stuff, seeing that online and cheering at the movie screen when you go to see it, and now seeing this with Fantastic Four, it kind of... It's like Two-Face, really. One good movie, one bad.
No, exactly. It's the exact opposite side of the coin, and it just goes to show that Simon Kinberg may not have only had a few flops back in the day, because a lot of people forget Simon Kinberg, who not only wrote X-Men: Days of Future Past, is also the man who's responsible for XXX, State of the Union, X-Men: The Last Stand. He had a hand in, what was one of the other films that he wrote? Didn't he have something to do with the original Fantastic Four? I'm pretty sure he did. I don't know if he wrote it, but he was a producer on it, I'm pretty sure. This is a guy who has not in the past had the greatest track record. And only recently has he had a few films that have come out that have been very good. Most noteworthy, of course, is X-Men Days of Future Past. And he's the sole screenwriter on that. I'm pretty sure they had ghostwriters come in just to do little touch-ups, but for the most part, it was him. And for someone to come out and make that amazing of a script, and then have all these other properties, and then something like Fantastic Four that has nothing to do with its source material at all, it just frightens me. But if that leaked photo of the Thing is any indicator, at least the designs of the characters are going to be more in line with what people are going to want. I think that he looks a lot more intimidating, because the Thing played by Michael Chiklis, to me at least, did not look intimidating. It didn't look like rock. It looked like rubber. It looked like a foam suit that he was wearing. And we do know that the Thing will be computer generated. But the design aspect of this character does go to show the more gritty, realistic aspect that we know that Josh Trank is going for. And I think that's kind of the idea they're trying to convey when they say that it will be a found footage-like movie. It's going to feel real. And I think that's what they're going for.
That would actually make a very close to, like, if you've seen Elysium.
Yes.
How that kind of had the found footage look to it.
Yeah, it did. It felt... It didn't really feel like a documentary per se, but it felt like it was like you were there with them, and I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, if they had it something like that'd be perfectly fine. Now with what I think he came on the record a couple days ago, saying now that the original 3 X-Men movies are kind of completely unwritten from the timeline. It's very possible that new characters could be in the X-Men, old characters would be gone, and this was all in relation to somebody asking him about whether or not Angel would be...
Archangel, yeah, they were talking about Archangel, I remember that.
Horseman, yeah.
I hope so, because they did say that X-Men we've seen in the past will be showing up. Now, the way that the continuity of the movies has been set up, even though they went back to the 70s and erased it, Warren Worthington II is still alive. Which means that Warren Worthington III, who is Angel, he will still be born around the same time. Or later on, but he won't be really born all that much earlier, which means the age demographic in that movie won't be all that different. So the thing is, though, is that Apocalypse is set during the 80s. And unless they have changed it around and Warren Worthington II is the one who actually has the mutant gene, then that could work. Then they could have Archangel as... Or actually, I don't even know if it would be Archangel. I think he would be Angel, because doesn't Archangel have the metallic wings?
Archangel is what Angel turns into once he becomes one of the 4 Horsemen.
But doesn't he be given? Isn't he given metallic wings, or they're much stronger? They're not like feathers or like regular wings, aren't they? Something like that. I thought I remembered that being in the comics.
Yeah, they're fully metallic, and he's got like this full body kind of suit.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
So I don't know if that's the route that they go for. If they do, that would be incredible, because that's something that we haven't seen yet. And that's what I hope they do with Apocalypse. I hope that they don't... I hope Wolverine is not the main character in the movie. As much as I like Hugh Jackman and his performance as Wolverine, I hope that he is not the main actor in the film, because I loved what they did with him in Days of Future Past. Because, and this isn't really spoiling anything, because I'm not going to go into any real details, but even though he was the main character and the storyline did follow him, he was not really involved in any of the action sequences.
Yeah.
And it focused on the other characters, because these are things that we hadn't seen, like Magneto navigating a bullet. You know, that was something that was hinted at, but we'd never seen it before. You know, seeing Mystique actually being Mystique and not just being a henchman. You know, these are things that we'd wanted to see, but we hadn't got a chance to see. And I think that he's going to, and especially the Quicksilver sequence. I mean, that, oh my God, I was so surprised by that.
I specifically like with the Quicksilver scene when they're at his house the first time. That kind of bugged me a little bit. There were only 2 parts in that movie that really got to me, and that was one of them. How they didn't reference their own version of Scarlet Witch.
But the reason that they did that is because I think that was part of the deal with Fox and Marvel, was that even though Fox can't reference the Avengers and Marvel can't reference anything to do with mutants, I think that part of that deal was whoever has Scarlet Witch as a definite character or a defining character in their storyline will mean that the other property cannot try to fully develop that person either. Or at least if they do, there's a caveat with that. But they did reference a little bit to her because they had the little girl that was there was not Wanda, that was Polaris. Is that her name?
Yeah, because they referenced the sister upstairs.
Yeah,
in the movie. Yeah,
but it was just a little reference because Quicksilver's scene was not big to begin with. So them just getting to reference the fact that he has another sister who's probably the same age, that Magneto is his father, even though they didn't outright say it. He goes, "Hey, you know what? My mom used to know a guy who could do that." And then in the interview, Michael Fassbender actually came out and officially said that yes, Quicksilver is Magneto's son. In this continuity. So he did confirm it. That is official. So I think that's probably something they're going to touch on in Apocalypse because Quicksilver will be getting a much larger role. And who knows if they do end up bringing in Scarlet Witch. We really don't know at this point because there are certain mutants, because it's going to be taking place entirely in the 60s, or in the 80s, sorry. There are going to be mutants that we're not going to be able to interact with, such as, Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Rogue, Iceman, all the younger cast from the original trilogy and from Days of Future Past we're not going to be able to interact with. So what new mutants are they going to be bringing in?
Well, with something like that, I mean, I'd really be mad if they chose to keep the one deleted scene, the second part of Days of Future Past that I really did not like.
Oh, the Rogue sequence?
No. This is a big spoiler for anybody who has not seen the movie.
All right, so spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen Days of Future Past and want to avoid hearing about anything, you guys can go ahead and skip ahead for about a minute or two where we get back to the regular talk.
In Days of Future Past, they released one of the deleted scenes where Mystique is going through all of her deceased mutant brethren, and Havoc was there in the pictures, and I really hope they bring him back. I do.
Wait, he was in the beginning part of the movie. I don't remember that.
He was in the beginning part of the movie in the military base.
Yeah.
And they did not release exactly what happened to him after that, after the big mutant crawl. And they released a deleted scene that when she was flipping through all of the pictures of deceased mutants and everything.
That one of the photos was actually not Scott Summers, but
Havoc, yeah.
Alex Summers.
And that really, I wish they don't keep that.
Well, I think that if they did cut it out, because not only do they sometimes cut it out just because it doesn't fit within the context of the film, but they will cut it out because it may have pigeonholed them into a section that they don't want to get themselves into again. And so they probably took that out for that specific reason. Because I think in the 80s, they are going to introduce Scott Summers. And if they introduce him because of Alex being killed, that we've seen that 100 times. But if they introduce him...
Evolution brought that on.
Exactly. If they introduce him that way because once he hit puberty, which is how all of the characters develop their powers, once he hits puberty, he starts to be able to develop this laser vision, essentially. If Alex is there to really mentor him, and they have a quick little 1 minute to 2 minute sequence showcasing him saying, listen, I know it's hard right now, but trust me, it gets better. Because when Alex was first trying to do it, I mean, those discs would just go flying everywhere, and they would slice through everything. So...
one of the big things I'm looking for now is, if you were a big fan of X-Men Evolution, the TV show, very old animated TV show.
I remember it. I don't remember it all that well, but I do remember watching it.
Yeah, I think it's like the second season, Havoc, Scott Summers' brother, they thought he died from the beginning in a boat crash or a surfing accident, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then season 2, here he is, and he's evil working with Magneto. And Scott Summers and him end up with Magneto for a bit, and Scott Summers later on is able to control his laser sight. I think him being a Four Horseman would be perfect.
Well, I think they even kind of hinted at that in Days of Future Past, because he gets on the plane with Toad. And we know that through the evolution of the series that Toad does become a member of the Brotherhood, with Magneto. So they could have been hinting that that could be a way for Havoc's character to continue, and possibly even a showdown later on between the two brothers. I think that would be really intriguing.
That would be perfect. Yeah, that would be really nice.
But this is all just speculation. Again, these are all just our opinions.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know any official insight into the film. Again, it's just our opinion. When we do know the insight, we will let you know. But yeah, we've gone a lot longer than I originally thought that we would. So there were certain things that we wanted to get to talk to today, but due to the time, we just haven't had a chance to yet. So we will plan another episode where we will talk about some of the other topics that we didn't get a chance to. But for now, this will be the latest episode of Coming Soon, Movie News with Niklsun. Thank you so much for watching. You guys can click the subscribe button down there at the bottom corner where you can get updates whenever I post a new video. You can follow myself on Twitter at Niklsun, Niklsun, for all of your movie updates and information. And you can also find me on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Movie News with Niklsun. Joe, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at facebook.com/Rook, ROOK. I think it's Rook, ROOK dot Moonhammer, MOONHAMMER. That's my personal Facebook and everything, and then you can also find me at Rook Moonhammer on Twitter.
Perfect. So for those of you who didn't hear that, you can find Joe on Twitter at Rook Moonhammer, ROOKMOONHAMMER, and also on Facebook at facebook.com/Rook.Moonhammer. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.